What would it take for you to inject the ooze from a smallpox sore into your own body? Not long ago, it may have been your only hope of surviving the disease. This is the messed up history of smallpox. Smallpox was a disease caused by the variola virus, differentiated by a variety of presentations: ordinary, modified, malignant, and hemorrhagic. Smallpox got its name from the Latin word varius, meaning spotted or speckled, in reference to the pus-filled pimples that afflicted smallpox victims. Since syphilis also causes similar rashes and was also known as variola in 15th century France, smallpox was distinguished by being referred to as le petit variole, which translates to the smallpox. Unfortunately, even if you survive smallpox, you'll most likely be stricken with sterility, blindness, or pockmarks. On the plus side, you would be immune to recurrent smallpox infections. Smallpox was transmitted through airborne saliva and person-to-person contact and had an incubation period of 7 to 17 days after exposure, so typically a person would only be infectious once a fever had already developed. As a result, smallpox would usually be transmittable once the person was already sick in bed, effectively slowing down transmission rates, but that didn't stop smallpox from claiming over 300 million victims in the 20th century alone. Through a collaborative worldwide effort, smallpox was technically eradicated by the second half of the 20th century. According to the World Health Organization, the last case of naturally occurring smallpox was in 1977 in Somalia. Ever since then, the only known cases of smallpox were the result of a laboratory accident in England in 1978.
Good news from Geneva. The World Health Organization has made it official. Smallpox throughout the world has been virtually eliminated.
Medical historians use written records to assist in identifying diseases, but smallpox has a very spotted history. According to Baylor University Medical Center proceedings, some scientists believe smallpox originated in 10,000 BCE, but verifiable descriptions of smallpox only began to appear in 1122 BCE in China. Others claim that the mummy of Egyptian pharaoh Ramses V, who died in the 1150s BCE, shows signs of smallpox pustules, while scientists who recently sequenced smallpox DNA from a 17th century Lithuanian mummy contend that the smallpox virus emerged as recently as the 1500s. There are suggestions that smallpox is discussed in the Sushruta Samhita, an ancient Sanskrit medical text thought to have originated in the first millennium BCE. However, anthropologists such as Ralph Nicholas argue that the disease mentioned, Masurika, is discussed too trivially to be about a disease as fatal as smallpox. That suggests that either smallpox upped its severity over the centuries or the affliction referenced in the ancient text was misidentified as smallpox. There are no confirmed references to smallpox in Europe until the 500s CE, but many try attributing the various plagues in European history to smallpox. Smallpox is thought by some scholars and physicians to be the main culprit to the plague of Athens that decimated the city in 430 BCE, but bubonic plague, typhoid, typhus, and measles are all contenders, and there's little consensus. Since several diseases include symptoms of a rash and fever, it's difficult for historians to identify illnesses from the past solely through written descriptions. No matter where smallpox originated, soon it had spread across the Asian and European continents. According to Smallpox and its Eradication, published by The WHO, during the medieval period there were frequent epidemics of smallpox brought on by the movement of the Crusades. But these epidemics were nothing compared to the ones that would decimate the American and African continents as a result of colonialism and enslavement. In the 1500s, Spaniards brought smallpox with them in their colonization of Mexico, beginning what would become an avalanche of epidemics that would wipe out and depress the populations of the Aztecs, Inca, and Mapuche in South America, and the Mohawk, Iroquois, and Cherokee in North America, just to name a few. To the Native Americans, the Europeans seemed comparatively immune to the disease, since most of them would have recovered from childhood infections, while the indigenous populations of the Americas had no developed defenses. This vulnerability was also weaponized by Europeans. In 1763, British Field Marshal Geoffrey Amherst advocated giving smallpox-infected blankets to indigenous Americans during Pontiac's War. Having seen how the devastating effects of smallpox on the indigenous populations in South America ensured the military success of the invaders, Amherst was quite amenable to the suggestion of using biological warfare in his own invasion. This notorious incident is known since it was documented by Amherst himself in his letters, but it's not unlikely that many others use similar methods. Variolation, also known as inoculation, was one of the processes through which people would acquire smallpox immunity. For the U.S. National Library of Medicine, the practice would involve infecting an individual with residue from a smallpox scab or pustule, resulting in a less severe outbreak to induce immunity, should the individual survive their encounter with smallpox. While this process wasn't risk-free and could even cause an epidemic on its own, the 1 to 2% mortality rate of variolation seemed preferable to the 30% mortality rate of naturally contracted smallpox. There are accounts of variolation in China as early as the mid-1500s, where smallpox scabs and particles were blown up the nose to induce an infection. In India, there are also descriptions of an inoculation technique in the 16th century that mirrors vaccination today. A needle would be covered in fluid residue from smallpox pustules and then used to puncture the skin repeatedly. As variolation spread to Britain and colonial America, the origins of the technique were attributed to the Ottomans. It's possible that the Ottomans were the ones who originally spread the practice to India, since they used a similar method of puncturing the skin. But in the end, the origins of smallpox's inoculation are as murky as the origins of the virus itself. The man credited with inventing the first smallpox vaccine was English physician Edward Jenner, who lived from 1749 to 1823. Having grown up in the English countryside, Jenner noticed that milkmaids weren't vulnerable to smallpox. Growing up and becoming a doctor, he put a theory to the test in 1796 and infected his gardener's son with pus from a cow's cowpox pustules. After 6 weeks, Jenner attempted to infect the child again with smallpox, and after the boy didn't fall ill, Jenner conceived of the first smallpox vaccine. While Jenner was certainly not the first to suggest or experiment with infecting patients with cowpox, he was soon set down in history books as the father of immunology. But even the story of his original vaccine is suspect. In 2017, virologists analyzed an early vaccine from 1902 and found that the vaccine used a virus strain that is much closer to horsepox, publishing the results in the New England Journal of Medicine. According to Popular Science, since a vaccinia virus, the virus used in the smallpox vaccine, isn't found in nature and doesn't quite resemble horsepox or cowpox or variola itself, there's added confusion as to what the original vaccine could have been made from. And since viruses change from host to host and vaccines are created with the viruses at hand, it's unlikely that the ingredients of the original vaccine will ever be known. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about messed up history are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.